So I would guess we're starting. I did check the Telegram chat for any more agenda items to add. So I actually did this and we'll start sharing my screen now. So I extracted from the chat, as far as I could read through it, that we had a last comment from Douglas, I think, that he proposed we have like an update of the committees and work groups. We do have an item for this for today that we discussed last week, is reorganization of work groups, because in general we still have the work groups with different people in there that are not in this core group anymore. So we probably want to go through each and every group and decide who's going to pick up those if that hasn't been done inside the work groups already. Then I would like to have a short review of the smart contract that Guillaume created for the voting and commenting, if that's fine for you. Then we do have the priority top 20 item list that was mentioned that we should take a pick on that. I've looked at the file. It actually looked nicer before, because now we have like this ad hoc wallet plus, and I do recall we had an overview where the actual item was stated.
It's in ENF publication. The last tab will give you the top 20.
Ah, yeah, you're right. Okay. So I was confused. Okay, so I guess this is the top 20 item list we want to discuss and prioritize today. So so we will have a look at that. That's good. Okay, then communication strategy and updates. I'm not sure if there is anything. I've seen all the great postings of the articles, and I think virtually everybody has forwarded that in the community. So maybe we can have a short update from the chain how this was perceived by the community. Then the official voter announcements. There is still the wax voter is still missing here, but I would assume that's probably Lucas, unless you tell a different thing.
Oh, that's correct.
Okay, so I'll immediately add this. So we have the voters assigned here with Eve for EOS, Jesse for Telos, Lucas for Wax, and Guillaume for UX, which is great. Already done. Final approval, budget and cost. In the last meeting, we had a discussion about, it wasn't so clear if everybody's kind of agreeing with the cost split to like 100%. We know it's 8 million. But I just wanted to assure that everybody's really fine with the figures that are there and with the cost split. So I assume it's just like more everybody nodding with the head, and then we're done. But I just wanted to be sure that we have this. Then decide. Yes, sure.
Yeah, we also in that we also have to figure out, what are the mechanics, right? Just like yes. What address do we send something to? What are we going to use Firebase or something else? And those, I think we have to do both of those things. And when I mentioned when I mentioned like subgroup reports, I also meant let's see which ones we can throw out all together, which ones we can consolidate or get other things on. It's all kind of lumped together. So you and I, it sounds like we're thinking very much alike anyway.
Yes. So that's exactly the next one, is the decide, announce current funds management system and currency. We discussed that. I posted some information about Firebox. Let's tackle that the moment we're on here. Well, initial prioritization of requirements. I think that is actually the top 20 item list. So I move those together. Immediate next steps and procedures. That's also what you mentioned just now, Douglas. And then we did discuss about project management, product owner roles, product manager, and work group modes. So this is something to discuss later, is how is the actual setup of the different work groups, and how do we really start working now. So I think that's also kind of related to my role, which was currently moderating this workshop. and I'm honestly not into deep into most of the working groups, and I just want to be assured or just want to discuss how the roles are going to be split and who is doing what and what my role is going to be in that construct. Because on the Telos side, we would offer myself to kind of continue do this, but obviously it's great if we have a discussion on how the actual work mode is going to be. Okay, so going to the in progress items, I was hoping to have Justin here. So is there any update on the brand and marketing group lately? So maybe Eve or Douglas, do you have any update that you want to share about this group?
Yeah, there's no update. There haven't been any additional meetings, and that is by plan. So we had a series of meetings of in-depth, intense sort of question and answer, sessions with all of us. I think it was Aaron, not Eve, that was there with us, and so by plan they have gone away, and they're crunching that information and doing their creative process. So nothing, I think Justin knows when the next one comes up, but we haven't done anything new on it this week.
Okay. They did give us an update though. I don't know if you guys updated last week on that. Douglas?
No, go ahead. I not thought that I had heard.
I'm trying to find the channel so I can go and read the message.
Okay.
The
I
message
don't
was-
see it. I get involved when there's like a meeting or when there's work to do, but I'm not, I figured that anything else, Justin is very capable of any correspondence needed.
I've got
Yeah,
the
just
message.
for the rest of the group, because the Justin isn't here. Do you know, Aaron, what's the name of the group? I'm having a hard time finding it.
It is Word Studio with an X and then
Word,
X,
that's right.
EOSIO Rebrand. I just searched for Rebrand in my channel
Yeah.
list and found it.
So I don't know if this was given because it's April 11th, so not last week. Strategy report's been written and they should be able to share that before the end of the week. Messaging architecture, they finished their first pass and they're going through the names right now. They've gathered a long list of over 500 names, and they should be sending out the short list for cultural competency surveys, check availability across domains, trademarks, socials. Once that's in, they should be presenting to the group the final 3 contenders, so that then that group, Justin and such, can do the internal voting alongside the reasons and advantages for each, and then design their starting design this week. They'll begin mood boarding based on the strategy research and based on the initial 3 directions. And then they're going to set up a call, and that was an update on, I believe it's Sunday or Monday. Okay. So
I think I'm not in that group. I think maybe somebody tried to add me, but my settings didn't allow it.
You are not. Oh, yeah. Interesting.
So,
For some reason I thought you were. So I guess all that to say, the internal group should be getting 3 names this week or next week.
Okay. Whoever's the owner of that group, if they could send me a link, or give me in a minute, I'll change my permissions, and then you can just add me if you want.
I think so if you want to add me as contact, I'll add you as contact.
I'm not quite ready for that kind of level of commitment yet.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
All right. Well, I've added you as contact. How do I remove contact? How do I do that?
I was joking.
I know. I'm joking.
Sometimes I do that.
Now I need to find the group again. Yeah. So basically, I'm guessing the Justin should either next week, maybe for next week's meeting, he should be able to give us an idea of what those 3 choices are. And all right, I still can't add you. I think you need to add me, or
I just sent you my contact info. I don't know how to send.
I think you just click on me and then do add as contact, and remove your phone number if you don't want to share your phone number, but you just do add as contact. And once we both are contacts, then it removes the permissions.
Okay, well, I'll work on it. We don't have to.
Okay. Anyways,
that
is
let's keep going to the meeting.
That's the latest update on that. So we should be receiving something, I'm guessing, by next week from Justin for this group.
Awesome. So all in time as it seems, which is great.
I believe so. The original, as per the contract, the end date is May 12th. And so about a month ahead, this seems to be like they're still on track for the original roadmap.
Awesome. Yeah. So next item, I did circulate the Firebox cost. We don't have an NDA, so I can talk about it. Telos is paying like 18K plus 5K for 2 workspaces. We would only need 1 workspace because it's one organization basically that has the different permission rights. So the cost would probably be around 20K per year for the work group or new business, since they have like a price increase since early this year. So it's probably 20K per year, and that includes all the functionality. So fiat on off ramping, as well as exchange connections. They just recently added, or they will in the close future add KuCoin as possible exchange. So you'd have a direct integration with KuCoin, which was important for us on Telos side. So we're kind of beta testing this for them. But they have the big exchanges are on there. So it's also possible to kind of direct funds back and forth from the exchanges if you're having like liquidity events where you have to get liquidity from exchanges to this. So this is all supported in direct APIs then from the large exchanges. So question is, if we want to move forward, did anybody look at this more detailed or has any comments or any alternatives that you would like to propose?
I have questions about Fireblock itself, and I guess is the reason that we're aiming to leverage a system like Fireblock mainly for the off-ramp of fiat? Because I would imagine that we're not going to be on-ramping fiat into our account. We would be sending crypto into that account as the treasury. And is the idea that then we would be leveraging that function to pay contractors potentially or whoever, but in fiat, and that's really why we're aiming to go to the Fireblock? So that's question number 1. And question number 2 is, do we need a legal entity to have an account? Because aren't we creating a Fireblock account? So don't they need an entity for that?
So for question 1, yes, that is how Telos, the TF and the TCD use Fireblocks, and that's the problem it solves for us. For question 2, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I suggested it only because it was a tool set that we were using, and we use it, and we do have the TF is a legal entity, and if we don't have one, that may be a problem. I don't know.
The other thing, it simplifies, it's not just the fiat, right? I don't even know how much fiat we're doing. I think it's mostly USDT. What it does do also is eliminates so where do you store the USDT, right? If we all pulled in 8 million USDT, and I'm not saying that's how it's going to line up, but if it's all USDT and it's all pooled together, then it makes sense to probably hold it on Ethereum in like a multi-sig like Gnosis. But that can get expensive to do all of the transactions, depending on how many payments you make and how many deposits and withdrawals you have to do. So that's another big thing, that it's just a lot simpler, and all the multi-sig and approving of transactions and executing them is handled off-chain. So the only thing you end up paying for is, whatever, $5 to transfer the USDT, not $100 to coordinate the multi-sig proposal, approval, execution transactions.
Yeah,
is the idea that we want a third party, that essentially, because we have all of those functionalities on each of our respective chains, is the idea that we don't want to use one of our respective chains that have a third party where the funds are located? Like
a P network? I mean, that's what we have on Telos.
No, I'm just like, for example, you could have USDT on Telos, or you could have, like, we could all pool the funds and put them on Telos, or all put them on Wax, or all put them on EOS or UX or whatever. Is it because we don't want to rely on one of our networks and we want to use a third party where we put the funds?
Well, I think EOS is the only one that has first class USDT, right? And then the places, otherwise you're relying, like Telos has PUSDT through P network, right? But then we're trusting that bridge, and with all the things that have happened lately, I think there's concerns around that risk. So that's where that's why, you know, having the asset on its native chain, not a pegged version, you know, where somebody else controls the reserve, that introduces risk, that's one aspect of it as well, right? We at Telos made the deliberate choice to not store our USDT on Telos, not because we don't trust Telos, but because the bridge risk is, you know, does not outweigh the cost of using Gnosis. And now with Firebox, you know, we have a lot more multi-sig capabilities, and we don't have to deal with, you know, we could do as many payments as we want. You know, it's not a.
We could leverage EOS. But is again, it goes back to then, is the main reason for Fireblock because of the off ramp?
No, I brought it up, and I would say the reason I brought up Fireblocks is simply because it was a solution that we find useful and wanted to introduce it to discuss. I actually think there's no reason not to do it on EOS. I don't, you know, like most of the money.
There's a problem if we do it on EOS, the off ramp. Because we're likely not going to be, well, I guess we could, it depends, but the vendors that we're using likely won't accept USDT on EOS. And so we need to transfer it elsewhere anyways. And that's where I see then the advantage of the Fireblock.
Would they accept?
But then I see that we need an entity.
Would they accept USDT on Ethereum, or just not USDT at all?
No, they might accept USDT on Ethereum. It is possible. But that means that they have an exchange account that we're sending to.
Right, which is the point.
Tron seems to support multi-sig.
But to answer your specific question, Eve, I don't think that we were trying to solve for distrust within this group against anyone else's chain. I think it was just, this is a set of tools. It has some pros and cons. We also, you know, I'd be fine with, I think EOS is a great option because a lot of the money, you know, the bulk of the money is coming from EOS anyway. And I don't distrust any of these, you know, we don't have to trust. We could put an MSIG on any of these things, but on any of these chains, but EOS does, like Jesse messaged, has like one less hop, one less intermediary that we would have to worry about. It doesn't mean it doesn't have any, but it's one less than, like, you know, if P networks, you know,
I wouldn't go
with P network, or whatever,
gets
hit by an asteroid or something like that, then we don't lose all that. That's why we made that choice. And I'm fine with I think either of those solutions would be fine. If, you know, we should just pick the one that solves the most problems and introduces the fewest new ones.
Yeah, I think one thing about Fireblocks is that it has a very sophisticated authorization model. So the multi-sigs can be very complex if we want them to be. And also they have like whitelisting and blacklisting opportunities. So you can actually blacklist specific addresses or whitelist specific addresses. So you're sure that that funds are not sent to addresses that you haven't whitelisted. So it's an overall very secure solution. The only backdraw I mentioned was it needs to have one owner, which basically all Telegram people agreed to, that this is not a problem if ENF would be the owner, and then have the authorization, because the owner account can still not send funds if the administrators or signers not agree to it. So I think that was the only backdraw. In general, it has all the functionality that we would potentially need for a solution like this. It could be kind of expensive if we're not having many transactions, but if we're paying a lot of contractors and development teams on a monthly basis, using Gnosis could probably be very expensive. So this is kind of the proposal that's standing there. So if we want, I can ask them, take the task to ask them, and we get a demo of them so you can actually see what it does. But it's up to group decision if we want to take this sophisticated solution or take a homemade solution we have anyway.
Do we know anything about what additional services we would get for that hefty fee? For example, reporting, right? If it has sophisticated reporting tools, that might save us a job that otherwise, it's very onerous and that a person would have to do if they have that. I don't know if they do or not. But some of those things would, might be a good offset for the cost. Again, I got no dog in this fight. I thought it was worth bringing up as an option, because it worked for us. I would have no problem with ENF, being the company of record, and I'm not hearing anybody else say they do either. So if you do,
I would say if we choose to go the Fireblock route, we'll likely need an entity, and that's okay. And I think that the main advantage is it opens paying people in fiat. If we don't choose the Fireblock route, I would think it would be good for us to say, as a policy going forward for at least a little period of time or so, that when we engage with vendors, we make it a policy that they have to accept USDT, because we can't give them fiat, or giving the fiat is in one extra hop or whatever. So either or, I'm okay with either. That would be the main advantage. I think
against that.
That's the only real difference that I see.
What's
And in terms of permission set, like all of our chains all leverage EOSIO, which has an amazing permission set. We can do everything that likely we could probably do it even better than what they can do.
What's the current liquidity situation for USDT on EOS? I'm just not like very familiar with the.
Last time I checked was like 50 something million is more than enough for what we're looking for. But we can always just reach out to Bitfinex and they add it whenever we need it. That's not a problem.
Okay.
But now I'm
going back to that question. I think Yves, you probably know the most of the answer. If we had USDT on EOS, which shouldn't be too hard to get there with a couple hops and fill a reserve 8 million USDT on EOS, hypothetically.
I wouldn't put, by the way, I'm not sure. I don't know if you guys talked about that last week, but I wouldn't say that we should fill up the reserve right now. We should do like maybe a quarter payment or something like that.
Sure.
Otherwise, the funds are just going to be sitting there for no reason.
Are what we discussed and landed
Okay.
on, right?
So
with updating each quarter, we would update the would revisit what everybody's value and liquidity are to
Awesome.
make those adjustments. So I feel like that has already been agreed. Maybe
Awesome.
we're not on that.
So
There's $85 million right now, by the way, of USDT, just for context, on EOS.
what is the path and what's the friction for these contractors? You said they're okay with USDT on Ethereum. If we had it in USDT on EOS, I mean, what does it mean? You do a withdraw, a deposit to an exchange that supports USDT on EOS, and then you do a withdrawal. I would assume that exchange lets you withdraw to Ethereum as USDT there. So it would be like two-step process to pay these vendors would be the problem, or the added hop would be through Bitfinex or an exchange that supports USDT.
And that's the issue, is that a lot of people don't have their Bitfinex account. And so they would need a Bitfinex account in order to receive. There's only two, I think it's Kraken and Bitfinex that have USDT EOS.
Qcoin accepts it. That's what I use, and it doesn't.
But it's somewhat limited. That's the issue.
Yeah,
right? And that's where that's the advantage of Fireblock as well, is that becomes irrelevant.
Right. Yeah. And then the question is, if the vendor doesn't have an account that we can deposit USDT on EOS to, then there's an individual that's going to have to use their personal, or some entity's going to have to use their exchange account and then be an intermediary of that. Which
the other possible solution, which is kind of a hybrid of using Fireblock, is the ENF's business account. We've got a few. One of them is on Bitfinex. And so this group would send to the Bitfinex account to pay the invoice. Because then on Bitfinex, then you can do the swap from USDT EOS to USDT Tron, USD Solana, USD, whatever it is you need, USDT RC20 token to pay the vendor. And it would still be a 1-for-1, which would be the same as what you're doing on Fireblock, but without the $25,000 cost.
Yeah,
the
and
disadvantage of that approach. So you save 25K, but now you can't pay fiat.
and the other thing is, and this is a decision really for you, Eve, is then it may seem to commingle funds that are, that are just complicating whatever reporting you have to do, the ENF has to do. Right. And we have to,
No, because it would be revenue. So so actually, yes, there is an issue is if we don't spend the funds, then it would be revenue with no expense by year end. So that's why we would need to limit the amount of funds that we do send. So let's say for first quarter, all of you combined outside of EOS, right? Because we don't need to account for our own funds. We're not sending it to ourselves. So let's say all of you combined is in $1 million. We need to at least have $1 million worth of expenses. We can't end with a profit. So we would need to make sure that whatever funds you guys send us, we have to actually spend on projects. So we wouldn't be able to just leave a treasury there. That's the one issue.
Yeah, my point is that is a set of decisions that none of us have any, right or reason to decide for ENF. You just have to decide if you have to look into that and see if that's a problem or not, and let us know.
That would be the same on Firebox though. If ENF is the one that's the account holder of Firebox, that would be the exact same.
Okay.
So that I don't think is a difference. So for me, the way I see it is 25K, we can now pay people in fiat, save 25K, people need to accept USDT or any other crypto.
Well, I don't think that we have we're going to have very many contractors who won't accept USDT. That has been in our experience,
Word Studio.
What's that?
Word Studio. Actually, no, that's not true. They did accept USDT in the end. We paid a premium. The branding agency.
Yeah, I know. Well, that happens. Most of the things we're going to be working with are developers. It's going to be the bulk of everything. The question is, how many times a year do we have to figure out this fiat thing? If it's 4 times a year,
Is it worthwhile?
two, then it's not worth paying for that. And I think that any developers.
Thank you, Aaron.
That should just
Aaron just wrote a message. It is only KuCoin and Bitfinex, not Kraken.
Okay, so if it's just we're mainly working with developers who have EOSIO knowledge, I think any of them are going to be okay with USDT. I would. It's an assumption, but I think it's a safe one because it's been my experience. If we're dealing with branding organizations, they may do that, or we may have to pay a premium. The premium we have to, I don't know what kind of premium we have to pay. I don't know if it's going to
2.5%.
Okay. So how quickly does that?
Highway robbery.
Yeah.
But no, I guess ultimately the question is more so if people trust EOS, the chain, then that's not an issue. If people trust the ENF as the account holder, ENF is paying 71.6%, so, but it is still 28.4%. That's not the ENF's. My preference would be we start off with this method of putting at least the first quarter USD EOS, and then once we gain traction with this group, at some point maybe we do create a legal entity, but I don't think that should be the first priority. And then that legal entity would now bear that responsibility. And then we would use whatever, like we could actually create a Bitfinex account with that legal entity to be able to have a business account. And then that becomes a non-issue again, or Fireblock or whatever at that time.
That seems totally reasonable for Q1, for our Q1, right? For this quarter. Because there's no real way to assess which problems are likely to come up often and which ones are unlikely to. And so without at least a quarter or two of experience with that, we're not going to be able to make a informed decision. So I would support that. I think that the controls, the MSync controls, we all know that those are not chain, that no chain has the real advantage there. So seems good to me.
We can easily replicate the thresholds in the permission controls.
And we can do it now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
super quick. Yeah,
It could be,
So-
it could be a check in a box, you know?
pretty much.
So just to confirm the kind of workflow there, at least on our end, let's say we send you our share as EOS Network and USDT on Ethereum. We would send it to your, let's say, Bitfinex corporate account, Eve, for the ENF, and then you would essentially convert it to EOS USDT, and you would send it to that joint account that we would all be signatory of on EOS.
If you
Without
don't
some-
have a Bitfinex account, yes. If you do have a
Yeah.
Bitfinex account, then I would say just send it. Or if you already have access to USDT,
I have
EOS,
a
would
personal
say-
one. I have a personal one that I've had since 2012. I think that's not KYC, so I'd like to keep it that way. It's really
Yeah,
rare.
no, that's fine. That's fine.
So, but yeah, I mean, not a problem to go through the process of registering one and KYCing one. But I just did it for another of my companies, and it's going to take at least like a month. That's my that's how long it took for the last one. So, but yeah, I guess for now, if we can do it that way, that would be fine. And we like I'd start the process to get a proper one for our company.
And the amounts are 150,000 for Telos, 358,000 for Wax, and 60,000 for UX. That would be the first quarterly payment. And then EOS is 1.43 million, which I already have. I literally did the transfer at the beginning of this call.
Okay, so everybody agrees with those figures. It's just final confirmation. If you're not agreeing, then you should please.
So yes,
say
from
it.
Wax, just we need transfer instructions.
Yeah,
Yes, for UX.
we can get on that and give you those or give the group the instructions with the account. And again, maybe let me know if you already have a Bitfinex account, then we can just create the account. You can transfer on EOS directly, or if you need to send to our corporate account. And again, the only requirement on our end is we need to spend these monies. So if you guys are, we will need, the ENF needs to at least spend 150, 210, $568,000 at a minimum. So this group needs to, before the end of the year, spend at least that much money. Otherwise we run a profit, and then that's an issue.
Yeah.
Now, there is one other question, which is, we had been talking about, and this is very minor, but we had been talking about, what is our year? Do we have a fiscal year that begins April 1st, or do we have a financial calendar year? And if we're using an existing organizations, we will probably accounts will probably be forced into whatever that organization's financial calendar is. These are all very small things. I just think we should be aware. They shouldn't hit us by surprise later. I think Jesse's our official voter for Telos, but I believe we are all set to do this once, within a day or two, once we know what the mechanics are of payment.
Yep. I'm fine with it. Sounds good.
Now it's official.
Okay, so Lucas, you agreed. Guillaume, you agreed. Question.
I think we need Jesse to agree.
I believe he just did.
He just
Yeah.
did. He just did,
Yeah.
and I think tacitly agreed by.
Yes, I agree. Yes, by default.
Yeah,
Yes.
you agreed.
Yes,
by,
send me
by-
money, but I don't agree. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, and then I seem to have missed this. So we're not sending it to an EOS address. We're sending it to the Bitfinex account. And
I'll give
you
both.
pass this.
Well, actually, no, I won't give both. Does anybody have a Bitfinex corporate account that you'll use? If the answer is no, then I'll just give you no. Okay, so I'll just give you guys the Bitfinex account to send to. And then what we'll do is then we'll create the account on EOS. We'll ask you for your keys. We'll match the voting link that we have in here. We'll set those as the permissions for owner and for active. And once the funds are sent in Bitfinex, we'll send them and we'll have a 1-for-1 minus, I'm guessing, maybe a few dollars or so for the administration or whatever. There shouldn't be any slippage, but whatever it is, so it'll be pretty much 1-for-1 what you see in the account. What I would need from everybody likely is, I'm gonna need an invoice. We will invoice you. How are we gonna do that? I'm gonna need to talk to accounting about that. I believe I'm gonna need to invoice you guys so that I have a reason why you're sending me money.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think those are details that I think we've cleared up the major structure. And yes, there are details that will come up, but I don't think we need to discuss them any further in this because it seems like
Yep.
we're all agreed on a way forward for the next quarter or so, at least. So I'd say let's move on to the next agenda item.
And on that, I think that once that's done, that would be a really good piece of communication for the communications team as the next piece of news. So the commitment was done, and now this transfer of payment that occurred, which makes it very real for everybody else.
Yeah, especially if we can pair that with any other, let's keep a ongoing chain of progress communications that will be, it'll build trust. And so Lovejoy, are you Brian, are you the lead communications for this group, or are you just for the ENF, or who's leading the charge of that? Or Zach, or I guess who?
I mean, I think it kind of falls on, I mean, I got volunteered for that job last week, and I know Zach is probably going to have a hand in it. And I'm not sure how we coordinate across all the different chains as part of a conversation I wanted to have. But for now, if people just highlight those items that we want to make sure, get communicated to the public, like the transfer of funds item, that'd be really helpful. I've got a document started with all the EOSIO plus updates that I'm thinking would make sense. And then Eve had suggested a 2 or 3 week sort of update cycle. So I was kind of going based on that. And I guess that would depend on, what news we have to release to the world. So I guess, I can kind of take it on unless it makes more sense for someone else to handle it, or
I got that first press release, I kicked that one out, but my goal in that was I don't think that, unless you tell me, I don't think that's should be an ongoing process. I just wanted to get that started, and I knew that starting is always hard, but and so unless you guys tell me, I'm not anticipating that I'm going to be part of the communications team, right?
cool. And just so I'm clear, for the moment, this is going to just be kind of a decentralized communications effort. I mean, we can lead it for sure, but there's not going to be a central organization until such time as that legal entity is set up. Is that the idea? Speaking like for the group?
What I'd imagine is that outward communications would be a committee here that basically, gives a short report of what we're doing, and has a clear point of contact for when we decide that something is newsworthy or, that worth sharing. And so if that, say, for example, that's you, and we agree with that, which seems great, then I think when we have issues like this and we go, hey, we should probably do this, then that gets on your plate. And, and if there are questions that people need to if we need to have a vote or anything, that comes up. But otherwise it's just, okay, great. Here's the calendar for these things. These are going out. And I think if everybody has visibility, and it's going well, and everyone feels fairly represented, then I don't think it needs to be overly complex.
Yeah, so the issue we have until the branding is released, we have this new name, is it doesn't make sense to create like a dedicated EOSIO coalition group, because we're just continuing this EOSIO brand. So it's just a matter of where updates would live, because not every update needs a big PR push like we did last week. So if it's just something that is kind of internal within all of our EOSIO communities. Like, where does that content live until we have a dedicated brand and website for this group by whatever name it'll be under?
Are you looking for a location, Zach? My thinking is it doesn't matter.
All right,
You're talking about like the brand will come out in roughly a month. We'll be able to secure assets in a month. How many instances of communication in that month?
Then
Maybe
let's
another
just,
two.
then we'll just do what we did last week. We posted it to our blog, and we'll be
I think it's a
posting.
non-issue.
Yeah, okay. Then we should be good. We could handle that.
I think it's fine.
Let's keep it simple.
And I think what Douglas is asking, and I support as well, is like one person needs to lead this internally though. Like somebody's making a draft, somebody's reaching out to the 3 other chains or 4 other chains. So I'm guessing that person is part of a chain, reaching out to the other chain saying, hey, are you good with this? Do you want to add this? I'd like to have a quote, whatever. What do you think? Like somebody needs to take on that role. And Lovejoy, I guess you've been voluntold for that. Yeah, if you're good with that, then that would be awesome. Yes.
Yeah, I can do it.
And I don't foresee anytime soon having staff dedicated for this that externally hired. There wouldn't be any work. Like that person would be doing nothing for, so.
No,
Yeah.
all we need to know is like when we talk about things like this, hey, we should probably get this out. We need to know that hasn't just gone into the ether, that there's somebody who's going, got it. If any
And
questions.
Brandon, you're good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. And for then helping me out when we have these meetings, if we could just kind of highlight the items that we kind of want to focus on for external communication versus what is something that's still under consideration or not yet ready for public release, that'd be awesome on this Miro board, probably.
Maybe just make a press call, column or space or whatever, and just have those things listed as tasks.
Yeah, I think just thinking of the cadence here, we did a release last week. We don't have anything this week.
I think it would be next week would be the transfer of funds. And if I'm looking at this right, the account that we create would be the 7th or 8th largest USDT holder account on EOS. So like that can also be part of it. Like you can just make an article out of that. Not only did we make a commitment, now we have funds. It's a big account. Here's the MSIG permission set. Like you can make something out of that.
That changes everything.
The next one
on Telos.
Well, no, it's because the other ones are pretty big.
I want the TVL, baby.
Oh, you can have the TVL. It's we're talking about $1.7 million or something like that. And then the next one that I foresee would be the name, which would come out roughly in a month. So 2 weeks, 2 weeks. So if we can get out a cadence of roughly every 2 weeks and stick to it, I think that could be pretty positive. And then anything else in between, ad hoc as well, if we really want to, but at least something more formal like this every 2 weeks, that'd be pretty cool.
2 weeks is fine. Nothing we're going to be doing is so important, most likely, that it can't wait, a week. If we bring out some news, even small, on a pattern of every 2 weeks, then we establish a release pattern that people can, we release what we have every 2 weeks. Here's what we've done. There should be none. There really gives us a goal of not having any empty releases. We didn't do anything this 2 weeks. Like we better scramble for something, because we ought to be putting out a series of communications, where there's some kind of public progress every 2 weeks.
I would imagine that the following ones would be assigning contracts, like assigning the RFP for faster finality, for example.
Whatever it is, it's whatever it is. Let's do. I would say let's just do stuff. Let's start putting some checks in some boxes, and then 2 days before the 2 week thing, because this doesn't have to go on wires or anything. Then we just report what we do. That's fine. If we have some really major things, like we release the roadmap, that is probably,
that's a
sponge worthy. And we should.
Yeah.
So if we're going from 2 weeks from the first publication of the announcement, that's April 22nd, for what it's worth. If we want to shoot for that as the next, if we'll have enough news by then that's.
I think we should pick whatever, like, from 1 to 2 doesn't have to be exactly 2 weeks. We should
Okay.
pick what is a good, if we say, hey, we did this on this day of the week, but going forward, we want to do it on this day of the week. Let's make that adjustment now and then sustain a 2-week pattern from there.
Okay, cool.
Great. I think
So
this
let's
is a
make
great
that
thing to do.
decision. So are we
Move it on?
releasing on Fridays? Is that the idea?
Well, I figured I'd confer with Zach and try to find like an ideal date for releases.
You can come back next week. I think Friday is a shitty day to release.
Yeah, might not
Well,
be great.
But
It's
we
like the
can't come back
worst of
next
the
week
week.
because next week is when we'd be releasing. So let's decide now.
But what
Um,
I'm saying is we've given these guys responsibility. They have knowledge of this. Let's let them discuss. Now it's there in their wheelhouse. It's in their responsibility area. Let's let them decide what the right day of the week is, using their knowledge, and not push anything on it just because there might be 3 extra days, if we decide that, Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday is better. I think generally Friday is considered the day you release news that you don't want people actually paying attention to. So
right. Yeah.
let's put it in their ball. Let's put the ball in the court. They can come back to us. It doesn't have to wait a week. You guys could come back to us in a day or two after you've discussed and propose it, and then we'll know going forward that it's going to be Tuesdays or Wednesdays or whatever. Is that reasonable to everybody?
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Works.
And we just need to consider, we always have a little bit of a lead time from the time everyone in the group approves it. We need typically 24 hours to get our translations done. It's just something that we do with ENF is we always publish in the Asian languages also, because the majority of our community is not speaking English.
Fair. Yeah. Like, give us all when you guys report back, give us all that information. Like the release will come out here. Therefore the press date for any information to be in, it must be this, just give us a schedule and then we'll start working on being on that schedule.
All right, cool.
Cool.
Thank you. Kirsten, should we move to the next one? I think they've done good work on this.
Oh, I'm still there. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm still here. That's good. Thanks. Yeah, that's good. So great one. Going back to communications and in progress, Zach, you wanted to check the possible, I think you were assigned in absence the question if you could take care of the YouTube channel or a new YouTube channel to publish those releases. So has there any work been done?
So there
it's actually
hasn't
for
been
next week.
There
Yeah.
hasn't been a public call yet. But yeah, we'll create a playlist. So even when Rami was hosting them, I have a playlist on our channel that hosted them. We'll just continue that until we have the branding. Once we have the branding, I think at that time we would create a new YouTube channel, a new Twitter, things like that. But for right now, all of that would be on our EOS YouTube channel. And most
Okay.
of the people
Zach-
watching it aren't average.
Zach, would you mind reaching out to Rami and or whoever may have it and getting that the last public meeting posted? Because I don't know about you, but I've had some questions. People just like to see it, and it was pretty, it's a pretty big one, and we should be sharing that, but it's not yet available.
Yeah, I think I might actually have the file. If I do, which I think I do, I'll get it posted today or tomorrow, and
Okay.
I'll share the link in the group, and then we can.
Thank you. Would you be able to send it to
Rami?
Rami too, just in case, because a lot of people are viewing it on his channel? Might as well just.
Yeah,
have
why
it
don't I
posted.
just do that? I'll just give it to him for this one. That makes sense, and I'll just continue all the ones in the future. So I'll mute
Sounds like a
myself,
great-
find the
sounds
file,
great.
and then give it to Rami in the background
Okay.
right now.
Awesome, thanks. I put the item for the YouTube channel into the backlog post branding, so we have it in there and can pick it up later then. So, but use the existing playlist then for now. So next item was Jeff wanted to lead the refinement of high priority items, where you wanted to to add like a 2 to 3 line explanation, a top level explanation to all the items. Would you give us a short update on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, so earlier this week, a couple of us met and started, we just grabbed the top priorities and started to create an executive summary on it. And it is interesting because even in the discussion of that limited group, it came out that maybe priorities would be shifting if we spent a little more time trying to think about what these individual titles mean, which is good. That's the intent of us doing this. If you can imagine us driving towards a fully fleshed RFP that we want to put out for people to bid on, that means we're going to have to keep iterating on something. And every time we iterate, we get this wide, vague definition slightly pulled in a little bit more until we get to the point where we have what this group feels like are real requirements that we could ask, 5 different outside vendors. I mean, I know chains may choose or not to choose to bid on, but it also might be organizations or people not in this group. And they should all have roughly the same understanding of what this group means for each of these line items that's showing up on the sheet. So I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I probably will anyway. So Jesse or Noam, do you guys want me to pull up one of your examples, and maybe we can just take a look at what we've done so far and make sure the whole group is good with that?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, either you can pick mine first, but Noam is numerically sorted at the top.
Okay.
You can start with mine, no problem.
All right, let me pull this up. All right, and now I will share my screen. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the sharing from you, Kirsten. All right, so this is an example. What we did is we know we want to get a process and run not only these 20 through, but we need a process that as the future comes at us, we can reprioritize, new items will come up. So to keep it simple, but at the same time, we want to keep work moving on things that we feel like everybody said was top priority. We looked at just the top ones, I think top 4 to 6 on that top 20 list. And here's an example of the one that popped up to the top, fast finality. You can see it's got the code reference back to the spreadsheet here. The objective, this is really to be a 1 or 2 sentence description of what we're trying to achieve. And we kind of had a good discussion about this because we don't want to describe at this point the things we think need to be built. We first need to make sure we're aligned on what it is we're trying to achieve and make better or improve. And so that's what the objective is here. And then right after that, we talked about the next thing we need to think through is what metrics are we going to use to show that if we go through, we spend this money and this project is implemented, do we have any sort of proof that we made something better? The other thing that identifying metrics at this point in the game helps with is it also focuses everybody on, all right, this is the target. So we might talk qualitatively about, well, we want to make this good, this more efficient and so forth. But if we have an objective that we all agree to that is defined by a metric, it makes it crystal clear. The other thing that a metric does, final thing, is that if we identify it now as opposed to later, then we can also step back and say, do we even have the capability to measure this right now? Or as part of this project, do we also need to build some lightweight tooling to start capturing data and get a baseline of where we're at? Now, I think in a lot of cases, we already have the information. There's a lot of great tools and monitoring and metrics out there, but we might stumble across something that we think, oh, we probably should start measuring this now to see if this is really as bad of a problem as we think. And then the final section is 1, 2, maybe 3 paragraphs at most, details about it. We don't want to replicate what's in the blue papers. Okay, so some of these, what we want to do is start off by saying details of this can be found in this blue paper, in this section, and so forth, because we don't want to redo work here. But for some of the ad hoc ones, particularly, we do need to spend a little bit of time describing what it is in more detail. And the final part of this section is describing the high-level deliverables, high level, I want to emphasize that we think need to be addressed on this. And we don't want to forget about things that are not just code. And what I mean by that is some things like faster finality, well, if that gets implemented, it's buried into the technology and it just, people will start getting the benefits. But if it's something like, for example, a security library that's, set out there, we need to also provide as a deliverable some sort of instructions to future developers on how to effectively use that library, or else all we're doing is putting code out there and, a small group will be able to use it, but not the larger group. And so this is one, I guess, Noam, you did this, and you also did another one. Jesse did too as well. And so first, maybe I should pause, take some questions on this, maybe feedback, or maybe confirmation that everybody thinks that this would be a good next step to help us discuss and prioritize in a little bit more detail the one-liner titles that we've been looking at.
So to your point on the KPIs, it's kind of clear that, when we're saying faster finality, if we know that we're saying that, again, we should have a percentage consistently measured at a maximum of 6 blocks behind. Is that 95% of the time, 75% of the time? Reduction in number of detected microforks. These KPIs aren't measurable yet, and that's why you're saying you need some tools. So because first part of this project seems to be implement some instrumentation to get some known numbers on the averages or median, whatever, performance of the network, and then say we're going to reduce this by X, because otherwise it's still very qualitative. This is great. And one other thing I have is all of the ad hocs were literally 1 to 3 words, maybe 2 to 4 words of their description, right? And people were voting on stuff. We think we probably got 5 of the ad hoc into the top 20. But the reason this paper is so valuable is that we didn't have a blue paper to reference for any of the ad hocs. So these are the first time we're putting anything down. And my suggestion would be is we should prioritize getting all the ad hocs written out first. And if we need, to get some of the engineers on board with that, like get, Matt and Arig and Bucky in there, I think, we can probably even loan a little bit at Kevin Hefner. Happy to do that, because I think this is really important, especially with these ad hocs. We need this page because we have nothing to show for an RFP or anything. So I think this is great. Just the idea of tightening it down a little bit, which means maybe the first section of this this whole release is to get the KPIs tight enough that that you've now hit the mark with the faster finality.
I think all very good points. For the faster finality, I added the last paragraph of the details section, kind of just describes quickly the need to build some sort of mechanisms to track these, I guess, like KPIs now and in the future. I know some of that work has already been done up to a certain point. I think Diffuse or like the team behind Diffuse had a tracker for micro forks and the depth of reorganizations and chains. So there might be something we can build on that's already more or less available. But yes, absolutely. This is kind of first draft, and hopefully we can improve over this and repeat the process for all the other I guess like priorities, starting with the Haddocks one that I think should be done first. Like you said, like we voted on them, but I don't think people give too much thought about what they actually meant.
Yeah, the details is good. I mean, I think if this one had, maybe I'm being too specific, but had a section called deliverables, because the first part of this project, I'd make that last paragraph where you're talking about the instrumentation and tooling. I'd make that the first deliverable, like your first, milestone where you'll get paid is you deliver these tools and you can demonstrate that you're, now seeing these KPIs that we need to see. And, maybe we borrowed it from the diffuse code. And then the next deliverable is, and now you are doing the faster finality and you can prove it because the monitoring tools show that you've reduced, the 75th percentile or 85th percentile of, 6 blocks or whatever, that you want to look at that. But I do think that the monitoring tools, this project, in my opinion, is 2 projects bundled together with the first deliverable being those monitoring tools that enables the delivery of the second part of the project, which is the faster finality. And so that way people are going to bid on it. It's going to cost a little more to get it done, but it's going to be very provably correct.
Yeah, agreed. One thing that came out also from that previous meeting is that some of these, I guess, like features or priorities are somewhat related, and it would make sense to probably have a steering committee that would, be created for these groups of features that we're trying to develop, because they will not necessarily overlap, but they will definitely connect between each other. So it makes sense to have the same people that are going to be, I guess, like speccing these requirements to be working on related and close features that, like, as a group, rather than giving them to different people to look at. So kind of part of the same thing, I guess, same general idea. If we're going to be as we kind of build these requirements, we may find that it may make sense to group them together and make an RFP for multiple features at once, or break them down and kind of separate these different RFPs for different parts of one particular feature, that the way we voted on it.
I would suggest we have really a series of programs already defined, right? Audit plus, wallet plus, recovery plus. I mean, those are really focused around the groupings of benefits that we want. And while those groups, kind of are spinning before they spin down from the blue papers, I mean, you might have a core of people that then could pull in the appropriate, additional help if they have extra questions.
The trouble is ad hoc group wasn't a group. There was no ad hoc blue paper. And this is the area that I think we're the most, that we're a little, most not as strong, not as crisp. And, and a bunch of these tend to be scalability and performance. And I just wouldn't want to see that kind of tossed into the Core Plus group. I feel that might not help.
It's also the other groups have sunsetted already. So their contract has expired, their functionality has ended to this stage. So if we were to reignite that, which is possible for items that fell under their purview, that would be something new to add to the plate. It wouldn't. They worked more than what they got paid for at this point, for sure.
Yeah.
But we need a 5th group, though. We need a group. Maybe it's called performance and scalability, and maybe we have Areg or Matt or Bucky and some people from the other chains kind of coalesce around that and take a lot of these ad hocs together, because this is going to be where it's going to be really tough to put these RFPs out. This is fantastic. This gives us something we can start to work with, but before we had like 3 words for a whole item that made it all the way into the top 20, right? And it was open to interpretation exactly what that was. We didn't have a good RFP.
I second that idea. So the fact that we don't have like all these scalability items were thrown into like this other bucket means that they came in probably late. most chains don't necessarily care for most of these right now, but we do. So, I mean, if you need someone to kind of organize and lead writing out these for like scalability plus group and have a blue paper for that, then we can definitely lead that side group from a WAC side.
Happy to
Most of these things on
volunteer
that
as
list.
well.
So let me throw another framework thought out though, because I didn't mean to distract on the fact that we were missing a specific group. Yes, I agree. And we might even find with the amount of ad hocs that there's another group that we're not thinking about right now that makes sense to coalesce and own, something else. Maybe not. But what I'm getting at is we have these conceptual groups that should be created to then take these executive papers, and those groups are responsible for breaking them down into requirements, like a work breakdown structure, because even though this paper has more detail than, of course, just the words final finality, this is by far not close enough to, set up in an RFP. I mean, Ted, you even pointed out immediately, it looks like we might have 2 projects here. And that's what I'm saying, like other ones are going to go through the same thing. And the way that we get to that answer is we take this. What's that?
I think what you're saying. So the question to you, Eve, would you be willing to allow us for the items that were picked across the 4 blue papers? This is a 2-part thing here. Could we re-engage? Could Jeff and I and some program management people re-engage those original groups and say, help us form these that were selected in the top 20 into RFPs, because they're the SMEs, right? They're subject matter experts. But I think we would need Lucas to lead a group for a 5th blue paper, whether we write the blue paper or not, or we just have them start to drive this 5th column, which would be scalability plus, and we pull that together, because again, we'll need that. And it sounds like is willing to join that as well. And we pull that together, and this may need to be compensated, right? We're asking, I agree with you, Eve. We're asking them to go above and beyond where they ended with their blue paper. So these might be some smaller amount of compensation to get them to help us run through this RFP process, where Jeff and I and some program management people will kind of turn the cranks and mold it out. But we need kind of the original authors. And I think it would be good if we at least formed a scalability plus group. Even if a blue paper doesn't come out, we need them to kind of help us crank it through into RFPs that would go out for bid. Would you be open?
Are you asking me because the ENF would fund this, or should we
Well,
as the group,
I mean,
because the group as a group would use some of its treasury,
I guess that's not
incoming
fair.
treasury?
I was asking you because you had funded the other blue papers. So I guess that's probably inappropriate.
I guess it was a 2-part. So for the first
But
part,
funding should move to the new group now.
yeah, and if we wanted to go back to the old group, the original authors of the first original blue papers, then I would say first, as a group here, we should determine whether or not are we, like the top 20 that we've laid out, are we going to address all of those? Are we actually going to fund all those items? If we're not, and if we don't make that determination, then I wouldn't go back to the group to create an RFP if we know that number 18, actually, we're not even going to get to it anytime soon.
Right, no, we would do it sequentially. We'd start with the first 5 or 6 that we know we could probably get in flight in parallel. Maybe we can't get all 6 in parallel, but we'd start out and we'd say, okay, so one of these is core, one of these is audit. I don't have the list in front of me. And we would start then saying, how do we engage them out of, just the goodness of their hearts? Should there be some compensation to them?
Oh, for sure.
For coming back in and working with Jeff and I and whoever else wants to volunteer while we crank through this and write out an RFP that will then return to this group to review. Okay, here's the RFP we're about to put out for bid. Because we have a pretty good framework. Jeff's got a pretty good framework already built, but we need this type of data. And that's what worries me is the ad hoc items, which all scored fairly well, the ones that got in. We're literally looking at 2-word descriptions, faster finality, things like that. So this
Can I make
yes, sir.
Can I make a suggestion? I guess I can. So try and stop me. I think that what has worked well with me in the past in other projects is that we have a phase, as appropriate, we have a phase 0 on any projects we want to bring to RFP, and that phase 0 is where we, for a much smaller fee, basically approve any groups we might, who might be worthwhile having that input. That might be everyone we think is going to bid, or that might be a small subsection, whatever. It's our decision, and have phase 0 be, specking out the actual deliverable that would be bid on. And that would be a chance to bring in, this is a chance to bring in other people for them to say, okay, here's what we think this should say, and get different perspectives of people who we think might have to actually enact it. And I think that can be done very, very cost effectively. I don't think it has to be much, because people are going to want to be in on the definition of the RFP.
So the one thing I'd challenge that is that right now, the people writing the RFP are wearing the hat of, we are the customer as the community here. And there is in an RFP process, there's a section where people who want to bid have a chance to review it and come back with questions. It's not like they just throw a number out, and we need to build that in as well. So I absolutely hear what you're saying there, but I would say that I think writing the RFP, we need to not be thinking about, oh, this is money I can make on this, but rather this is, as the customer of the community, we're all agreeing that these are the deliverables. And that's why
I wasn't proposing it as a panacea. I was saying it's something that done in the past. Sometimes it works. I think ultimately what we want to get to is have somebody on staff writing the business requirements, writing very specific RFPs, as essentially a full-time job. I just think we're trying to figure out something to, a transitionary measure to get there.
So Douglas, I agree with you, and I think that's something that Jeff and I are happy to kind of take on. And the question I have is just a little bit more. The people that are part of the consortium now, that are these 4 chains, I can see them saying, like, we're going to contribute, we're going to join, and we're not going to need to be compensated because we're the direct beneficiaries and we're driving this. But occasionally, like, let's just pick something out of audit. So we decide, hey, we want to fund this, but we need a little bit more from the people that wrote it. And let's say no one from the audit committee, or let me just pick a more important solution here, different solution. Aaron, who's on the call, we decide we want to get the RFP for the Wallet Plus, one of the Wallet Plus items, and we're getting ready to kind of put that out. Now, we could just say, look, we're going to give it to Aaron's team, but let's say we were going to put it out for an RFP process. We might say, Aaron, we want your help in writing this, but Aaron's not part of the consortium, right? He's not one of the direct beneficiaries of this. Would we compensate Aaron, from the 4 of us? So, like, I get, I think
what you described would be would be the situation that a phase 0 type, spec phase would be appropriate in. I think personally, I there's a part of me that says, let's just do the first 5. Let's figure this out. Let's learn by doing and learn through action. And because we don't know what we don't know.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think that's what Jeff has started with when you see that, what they've got here. Jeff, do you want to show a couple of the other ones?
Sure.
Were most of them ad hoc, or so here's an audit one.
This is the list in order. So the top 5, you had 2 ad hocs, 2 wallets, and an audit.
Got it. Let's look at the other ad
pull
hoc.
up audit.
All right.
Oh, would you want to see one of the other ones, which is fine?
I was curious to see the other ad hoc, because those are the ones that we start with ground zero, right? We had synchronous calls was the only description we had, right? That people voted that highly, and it's this is good. We have a better
So
Jeff, your feedback, I didn't incorporate it. I want to acknowledge Jeff.
Yeah.
Point out KPI needs more measurable numbers, and I didn't touch it after you suggested that. So
it's fine. We knew this was like a first stab in the dark draft, and we were going to bring it back to the group and have this exact discussion.
the good news is this is the most description. Before we had a 2-word description. Now we have a 1-page description. This is far better. So, you know, we'll just iterate and improve continually. And this is where we probably, especially for these ad hocs, if Lucas and Guillaume would be willing to, you know, meet, and I don't know the time zones and everything, maybe they're okay, you know, a couple times a week or at least once a week. Jeff and I will join. We'll try to just crank out all of the ad hocs. I think maybe 5 made it into the top 20. I'm probably wrong. Maybe it was 6. Jeff will give us an answer in a brief moment here.
We're the coalition of the willing, so we're willing, man.
That's right.
Yeah, and we've got, so for
Fine.
me, I feel like we've got smart, we've got intelligent, experienced people here who are willing to take it on. And I would be perfectly happy, rather than spending a lot of time talking about how it's going to be done, for them to just do it as they think is best and come back to us and tell us what they did. And I think it's just going to be so much faster than trying to, you know, like whatever you guys want to do, great. You know, it'll move us forward and we don't have to talk about it. And we can come back with progress.
Yeah, I suggest we guys set up this scalability plus or whatever grouping we want to have, and then we can tackle.
That was my goal. That's all I've been trying to do.
These.
Get commitment and find out who's in it. There's 9 of these that we need to read. I mean, right? And so 9 out of the 20 are ad hoc. So we have nothing on those. So now that you've all committed, thank you so much, Lucas and Guillaume. And you know, I don't know if Jesse wants to join or anyone else. You guys. Lucas and Guillaume, if you have others you feel are good, Jeff will work with us and we'll get on these calls and we'll start driving these as fast as possible. And Douglas, thank you for being patient with me.
I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. I think I trust you, right? You guys know your job. You'll do great. This is the right way for us to move forward on a lot of things, I think, in my view.
Because that's going to take quite some time before we go through the whole list, essentially, of the ad hoc items. Would we be able to put some weight on the ones that we have prioritized that are, we generally have a good idea of, good sense of what they are, which would be faster finality. In this case, is the highest rated one. I would say, let's try to get that RFP in shape to be able to actually put it out for tender within, let's say, the next 2 weeks. Would that be reasonable?
That's reasonable.
So we could actually have something of substance in front of the other. So again, that's another win, and that would be something concrete we'd be able to showcase.
When you say 2 weeks, let me caveat that. I would say it is reasonable to have a well-defined RFP ready for this group to look at it. If this group comes back and for some reason says, well, this is way off base, obviously we don't know what that information.
Jeff, you're referring to a shell. You're not referring to any one of these 20 items stuck into the shell. You're saying this is the shell we will use for RFPs for people to review. You're not saying you're going to get 2 or 3 of these ready for RFP, right?
Well, right. Thank you for clarifying that. Because, for example, it was already starting to look like we might want 2 projects for the faster finality, or maybe not. Maybe we allow people to bid on them together.
I just think let's get the shell agreed to. And I think what you're going to see is once we start to go really heads down into even one of these, it's going to take longer than you might expect to get it ready to go out as an RFP. And you know, so like, I think these short 1-pagers are super valuable, and we should get, I think I like what Eve's saying. Don't do all 9 of the ad hocs. Do a top-down process, because if we're gonna do them in this order, that's the order they should be done in. I think we're gonna clog the drain if we get 6 or 7 deep, Eve, and I think they were 5 deep already. And then we want to go even deeper with those 6 or 7. Douglas had his hand up. I'll shut up now.
No need to shut up. I'm just trying to be more. I'm trying to be more polite. I want to share what I do in my organization, Good Block, because it works very effectively, and I think that it would work effectively here, because I see that we're still being a little more cautious with everybody than we need to be, and then is time effective. So at Good Block, everyone knows what the priorities are. We have stand-ups, but everyone has enormous entrepreneurial autonomy to move in a direction because we have an amazing group of people, and they know, and as they know what we're doing, then they can go out and do their part without always having to check back. They have their, sometimes they need it, and they can make those decisions. I think that would work extremely well here as well. I think we've got a fucking brain trust of very smart, effective people here, and I think we're kind of trying to work them into a process that doesn't leverage all their experience, business acumen, and everything else. What I would say, and what I would propose as a way forward here, is we put together groups to work on things. They have a lead, and that lead collects whatever input he needs from anyone, including his team, and at that point, it's go do your job. Just do it, right? I don't think we're going to be able to get, daily stand-ups on this stuff. And I think we're going to fall into this weekly thing, which is fine. But this weekly meeting works if we have people who are coming in and saying, I knew what my job was this week, and here's what I did, and here's how we did it together. And it has to, like, that's, yeah. So that's, and maybe that's what Kirsten should be doing. I would say, with any of these things, if you're Brandon, if you're handling comms, I don't need to know what you do, right? Unless it is unless you have questions for me, or unless it hugely fucks up, which I don't think is going to happen because your job. Jeff and Ted, if you guys say, okay, we're going to decide what business stuff was going to be done here. I don't need to know whether you think it's more effective to do a type 4, or to combine things, or to do all of them. However you do it, and you tell us what you did, because you know what you're doing. And I think that we're just doing too much. All right, I'm going to stop talking. Thanks, guys, for listening.
I just generally try not to get fired by going the wrong direction that my boss wants.
Yeah, I just fired myself by sharing my screen, but in fact, as I shared my screen, as you all saw, and if you didn't see it, you probably see it on the video. My comment was to Jesse that my feeling is that you guys actually don't need me anymore, because it's such a great dynamic that I see here in those last 2 meetings. It's amazing, and I can just say that. Because we needed a lot of structure in those bigger meetings because they were so uncertain. But this kind of working mode that we're in here is so exciting, because I can see that there are so much things there, and people are really doing something now, and bringing ideas and bringing formats and work on the topics, which is awesome to see. So that's why I kind of mentioned this to Jesse, because I think it's all on a very, very good way right now, and that's very, very nice to see. So just wanted to say that.
But Kirsten, if we move to the model that I suggest, which I deeply hope we try, I think we need you even more, because everyone's going to be focused on their own stuff. We're going to be asking less input, right? One of the advantages of this model is that we don't constantly have to get input. We have people who are responsible in areas and say, this is how we're doing it. This is what we've done. And, and until something arises that says that's no longer, they're not on the right track any longer, or anything like that, then we continue. And we don't have to, I feel like we're debating the minutiae of a lot of things that we just don't need to. And if I think we're doing too much time on minutiae, then there's something really to be said.
Douglas, I second that. I mean, this is how we run all our teams. Each team is like a small mini startup, and they have operational mandate to just deliver. And we self-correct as we go, right? So we could take that approach for each of these working groups, and then use this time to kind of correct as we go, without trying to come up with like a operational framework and standards and templates for everybody, right?
The only thing
Yeah.
I would add to that is that we should be communicating our individual wins and challenges in a consistent manner, or else people will spend more time trying to figure out what's going on with teams they're not in. And so it's not necessarily, I'm not talking about anything like heavy set, but if we have like the scalability group, if Lucas is, for example, leading that, we don't want to know the minutia of that. We really only want to know, what are you accomplishing? What are you about to accomplish? And do you have big issues that you need to talk to about the group, right? We're not going to care about the details of like the technical stuff unless you're in that group.
Everyone on this call runs highly functional organizations and have been doing so for a long time. And then we get on this call and it's kind of like we're pretending that we kind of forgetting that we all do that and that we learn all these things. Listen, and I know that was probably a necessity in the old group, but it's not anymore. We've committed, we're here, we're doing things. To my view, the pace is too slow because we're being too polite. And what we should do is say, we've got a great team here of people. I know we're all on different chains, but in this, we're very much aligned. And frankly, I think that as we start working together, there's going to be a lot of unexpected serendipitous benefits that come out of this, of us actually working together, not just on this. It's not a requirement, but I just predict it'll happen. I trust you guys. I don't need to, there doesn't have to be a Telos representative on a group to get shit done. And let's just remember that all of us know what we're doing. Everyone else here knows what we're doing. And I'd rather just not hear about it until you need my input. And on every single thing, and you guys know what you're doing. You guys have run way bigger organizations than I do. And I just feel let's pick our leaders and let them do it. And if it turns out that it's not working, let's course correct as we need to. But otherwise, we're just wasting too much time. But Kirsten doesn't get to lead.
I would say, I don't disagree with what you're saying, Douglas, but I wanted to jump on in the context of the shell of an RFP in 2 weeks without even having the faster finality, or maybe if we were really bold, the top 4 filled out in the shell. That does feel, I'd love to see that RFP, like Eve said, go out in 2 weeks. And I know people are eager to work on it and people are queued up to start working or bidding on work. So I'd like to move faster in that context.
So we're referring to a template. The template makes it so each RFP isn't like handwritten from scratch. It has all the sections and it has the contact here and the blah, blah, blah. And so we have already started and have in relatively good shape an RFP template right now. It might not be branded correctly. We might decide, hey, this section is superfluous, we should remove it or whatever. And then the hard work is getting the contents of faster finality to be deep enough and exacting enough to fit into that template, into that shell. That's why I call it a shell. Template's a better word. And then it would be reviewed. But what we're saying, and again, not to offend anyone here, if you don't want to see it, we won't bother you with the details, but we think we could show you the template of what the RFPs will look like probably next week or in 2 weeks for certain. But if no one wants to be bothered with that, it's just that that is the format that every RFP will start to go out the door in. So if you want them to, if you want
the
to
faster
comment on
finality
that,
as that pilot.
Yeah,
Use the faster finality as the pilot, and if you can, on the 28th, so in 2 weeks, showcase, and essentially you're going to do both. You're going to showcase what the template looks like by showcasing what the faster finality filled out in that template would look like.
Okay.
And if on the 28th it's not finalized, that's fine, but that's what we should aim for, in my opinion.
And that might mean we'd be prioritized writing that, again, I'm going into details here, writing that RFP versus going deeper into the stack so we have 8 things that could work in parallel or something, because we'll probably need Guillaume and Lucas to be able to really drill into that level, and we don't know how many hours a week we're going to get at both of them to be able to get that level of detail into it. We can start that, literally tomorrow, or definitely get a couple hours on the calendar next week. So yes, got it. That's what we'll do.
I'd be in support of getting one out the door, learn from the process. I don't want to say that we're going to finish the process of completing the development work before we start on the next thing. They should all be kind of carried forward like dominoes, but we don't necessarily have to have a batch. Especially, I think faster finality is a clear number one. It's a good exercise to go through, and the others can follow shortly thereafter. We already have 4 of them now, with a little more color that we did this week. We could keep doing as we learn that this worked for faster finality. We could start doing those things with the other top 4, top 8. The second set of 4 can follow the first 4. I'd be in favor of faster finality being the pilot for the whole process.
Very good.
I've said faster finality for years now, so usually prepended by when.
Yeah. Okay. So
That sounds great.
Yeah, sounds great. So I already put this in here and say, create faster finality RFP document for review in workgroup. That's for April 28th. That's gonna be 2 weeks. So for the first review, and I put in Ted and Jeff as you proposed you would do that. If you want to kind of push this to me for a kind of review and some thoughts, I'll be happy to do that. So that's awesome. Then we push this over there, and I also put in create scalability plus blue paper, which I took that Lucas, you would take the lead on that one if I understood that correctly, and Guillaume/UX opted in to be part with that. So that's awesome. So I put in there's April 21st. Obviously, that's not a reasonable timeline. Do you have a timeline when you would expect to have like a very first draft to share?
I want to have it ready in 2 weeks.
Love it.
Awesome.
When you create that group, Lucas, if you could pull in Areg or Aaron Haggerty, Matt Witherspoon, and Bucky, that would be awesome. I'm sure that they'd love to help out.
Do you mind sending me that list via our Core Plus Telegram channel? So I don't.
Yes.
I know who to invite and all that good stuff.
Yep, we'll do right now.
And then yeah, I'm a little bullish on it because on Wax internally, we've been talking about this and working on this for the last 6 months. So there's a lot of building blocks that we already have, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Maybe you guys can bid on the deal and get us there faster. I think this is great. I'm excited about this process. I think it's great to have a pilot one so that we can learn from before we roll it out to 5 others.
Awesome. That's great. So we got this. As to the proposals, I actually where is it? I rephrased that a little bit to executive summary coordination for top 20 items, Jeff. So we have these 4 or 5 proposals. I personally like the format that with some of the comments that we had in regard of deliverables and then KPIs and acceptance criteria, which is very good. So is there do you have a plan to continue working on those, and do you expect to have some more ready by next week?
So I think this is now becoming a rolling operational procedure, meaning we're going to focus on faster finality now, which means we're going to deprioritize the other ones. But as soon as, honestly, that gets probably past the RFP and into development, we can start now queuing up a bunch of the other ones with what we've learned. And I can't tell you what we change on it now because we haven't learned those things yet. But so I would almost, in a way, vote to close this as a project item because I think it's good enough of the executive summary. And then
don't close it, delay it, put a
delay it.
Future. Yeah, because you want to finish all 20 of these. You're just going to pause it. Just pause it until you get the RFP out. and then we pick this back up and go a little further, get the second one. I mean, we may find that if we IO block on the RFP, we start working on this a little bit more back and forth, right? But let's not put a date that makes it where we're conflicting with each other. This is clearly a second priority to the RFP for faster finality.
What I would propose, though, because it's obviously a very it's in a 4-page or letter form, wherever you look at it. So it's a 1-pager, and obviously if we would have like the first 3 sentences for all the top 20 items, I think that would be good, because it would also be an item for the media release where we could say, well, these are actually the top 20 items we look at, and these are like the executive summaries for those, so people understand what they are. So if we would be able to do this in a reasonable time, maybe for the next press release in the next week, I think this would be awesome. But obviously taking resource of the people that are writing this.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to need we can get part of it. What Lucas is going to be leading will give you 9 of those, right? Because he's writing the blue paper for Scalability Plus. So that's 9 of the 20. We have 7 of those, 2 of those done. So 7 of those remain plus others. I think we're doubling up 2 teams and giving them 2 priorities, and we should sequence which is the higher priority. And if we want to say getting those done is a higher priority, and I can understand the marketing value of that, maybe we add a week to the RFP and
let's split up the marketing. So there's I don't see why we just transferred funds in this account with this amount to continue the momentum and look at these 20 items, 3 lines. I don't see that as being a right fit for a marketing thing. Let's have that as a standalone marketing thing in a little while after we actually have more content in it, or scale down instead of the top 20. If you absolutely want to pair them in this next release of the funding transfer actually occurring, maybe the top 5 or the top 10, like a smaller list that's more manageable.
5. We have 5.
So then maybe just the 5 then. And then to add to that as well, Aaron from Greymass is currently filling out the grant framework application using the SDK as his example. Theoretically, the SDK RFP will be complete even before the faster finality one. That could also be another pilot that we could actually bring to decision to this group before the faster finality one's actually out in written text, because that one's already written.
Yeah, you're right. So
it is priority number 4 right now. It's like we can run in parallel multiple things. Those are completely separate teams, completely different items.
Are you saying then take what Aaron is doing in the grant application, because that's what he's writing right now. He's writing the grant application. Transform that into an RFP. So we have an example in the RFP, because it'll be much of the same type of information, and use that instead of faster finality for our first.
No, I'm saying you could probably get both out in 2 weeks, because they're different people, they're different teams. But because it wouldn't be you. It wouldn't be the same people that are doing faster finality, and you could actually present both of them up for decision, or at least one of them up for decision in 2 weeks.
Well, that would mean that Aaron would work. The trouble is they're funneling all through Jeff and I, right? So either Aaron would write the RFP, we'd give him the shell, the template, and say, here, stick all your stuff in here as well. And Aaron's already still working on just doing the grant application, while Jeff and I kind of tried to work on, or we could split. I could try to take Aaron's piece, and Jeff could try to take faster finality and get those.
Isn't the grant framework application and the RFP shell that you're imagining pretty close to being overlapped, like maybe 80% or not even close?
One of the differences is that a grant is as the grant writer, you are writing it in context of, hey, this is my skills and my vision, so I am going to define the requirements around that. So you are granting me the money. Whereas the RFP is taking the opposite direction. We're trying to say, as the community, we don't care about the skill set needed to do this. We're defining the requirements of the endpoint first. And that's why you get multiple people to bid on it, because then we say, all right, which one is the best fit
So you mentioned that the shell itself could likely be ready by next Thursday, correct?
It's really ready pretty much now.
Yeah, I
Okay,
just,
so,
I could clean it up tomorrow.
Aaron, would you be able to, you can say no, but Aaron, would you be able to do what you currently did, but also fill out the RFP for that particular SDK? It is the 4th highest rated priority as well.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know exactly what that looks like. And I'm still working on the grant
Ted is laughing,
example.
of course, yes.
I've seen how much energy he put in the grant already and how many hours it took him. It's a lot. I mean, he's got a lot there. It sounds simple. It's a lot. And then we're doubling it on him now.
Could we have the SDK RFP up then for May? Hold on, my mouse, I can't find it. May 5th? Is that reasonable, Aaron?
Without like digging into it, I won't know. At like what level of effort
3
it
weeks
takes.
plenty to dig into it to ask $1.1 million?
Jeff, can you
Probably.
make this template, please? Send Aaron the template, please.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
That
I
way
can
we would keep the
definitely take a
cadence
look at it.
of having more than one item be able to be delivered to this group over the next month or so.
Let me try a different.
Or is that
tack.
too ambitious?
Eve, would you be open-minded? I mean, we're gonna approve what Aaron's doing and he's running it through the grant process. Maybe it's better to pick a different one to write a second RFP on, because we're kind of beating a dead horse there. Like we've approved it.
I was trying to actually do some overlap because he had already been doing so much work. I would say if the alternative is to take a completely different item, no, I would say then we don't have the bandwidth for that.
Well, have Aaron look at the template and
Yeah.
give him a little
I'd
time.
like to see how they compare. And it sounds like there's a lot of overlap between it. I mean, basically, I'm kind of writing the same thing 3 different ways. And so like there was the blue paper, and then there was the grant example, and then there's this RFP example. So it's just wrapping my head around all these different hats.
So one other thing, and this is my opinion, is that in a normal RFP process, the really complicated part we need to work out is the bidding and selection process. And in this like example, for a grant, you already know who's selected because it's the person who's submitting it. And in an RFP, you know, you got to make sure that there's really good equity, particularly in a community like ours, because we're going to pick a winner and we don't want, you know.
Faster finality was an ad hoc item, was the SDK came out of the blue papers, and the deal that the ENF had with the original authors was they get first dib. They can waive first dib rights.
Didn't know that.
But in this case, Aaron, and if this group says no to SDKs, likely EOS is going to fund the SDKs, and they'll benefit everybody anyways.
I will say that the blue papers are probably closer to what the RFP is, because we wrote the blue papers and tried to take ourselves out of it as much as possible. So I think the struggle is actually writing the grant proposal, because I'm having to introduce the stuff that we didn't include in the blue papers. So that's why I don't know how much time it'll take, but that's my gut reaction, is the RFP might actually be easier to lift out of the blue paper.
And I'm simply like, otherwise I would do a 2-week cadence, but because Aaron SDK is very different than who's going to be working faster finality, that's why I'm thinking they can actually overlap. They can work in parallel because it's not the same people. But yes, then Jeff and Ted become the bottleneck for that component, which is great because we're trying to hire more people. Now you give me even more justification to hire more people.
So Aaron, is that fine to put this in here on the board with the May 12th as a date?
Yeah.
Well, you add in an extra week. That's a month. That's a month.
Aaron, is it okay if I put it on the 5th of May?
Aaron's like, fuck you, Eve. We just had a call about wearing hats literally an hour ago.
No, just, you know, just like let him kind of be faster than we expect him. So that's gotta be a good feeling for him.
I know
I may
Aaron
come
will
back
get
early.
this done before May 12th. He's already written this 3 different times, or actually more than, he's written this like 50 different times by now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I've seen the like 70 extra pages of the Wallet Plus that didn't get published.
So
Okay.
inherent to the process of hiring experts and letting them and not micromanaging them and not and trusting their expertise is letting them set reasonable deadlines. And I think Eve, you and I are very much aligned in wanting to get things done faster rather than slower, but he's our expert and he knows what his life schedule is like. He knows what a lot of things are like. He's going to be the fastest one to do it for us anyway. So I'd encourage us to just let him set the schedule and with that he feels comfortable with and
Well,
and
prior
hope
to
that
this item, he wasn't even on the schedule. So I just put him
I
on
know.
the schedule and now
I
he can
know.
determine
No.
when it suits him.
I know it's Aaron. He's a good guy. He's going to get it done fast. Let's just let him set his delivery date would be my suggestion, because in the end, it's going to be what it is. Right.
I also think there's some value in having the same project in a blue paper, in a grant example, and in an RFP example. Like, it's going to provide hopefully a way that you can look at the 3 different ways the same idea is presented to get ideas on how for other people to be able to apply for these various things or to write these other things. So definitely.
On that, did Dan respond to anybody? And I'm talking about Larimer, Dan Larimer. I mentioned the other day that he had reached out, or sorry, Rami had reached out by email to Dan, myself, and he had included David, the co-CEO of Ultra, on the email, indicating that Ultra was willing to, or that a priority or the top priority of Ultra was to get faster finality. And he was reaching out to Dan to find out whether or not that was still something on the plate and whatever, and that they would be willing to financially compensate for that. 2 questions. Dan never replied to the email. Does anybody else know if, as far as you know, whether or not Dan and his team are still putting that on the table? Question 1. I guess Stan is gone now, so it's unfortunate, but you might know Lucas. Stan had mentioned that he had worked with Stephen Watanabe to get the architectural kind of blueprint of faster finality out. Do you know if they actually worked on that together? If he has access to that, maybe you can reach out to Stan and find out. And then the second question was, did Ultra reach out to anybody else on this, or did they just reach out to me? Because when I replied, they never reached out again, or they never re-replied, I guess, just so that we're all on the same page. And then that leads to the, should Ultra wish to financially contribute to this, we should have in the back of our mind, how do we do this? Do we accept a donation? Do we, like, how do we want to go about that if that comes? Because that seemed to be the what was being presented. I asked David of Ultra, what is he talking about in terms of financial contribution, to give him an actual concrete number or ballpark range, and I haven't gotten an answer. So if any of you know, or if basically now you know what I know. And I'll update the group if they reach out again or if they answer.
I'll talk to Stan, see what's going on there.
Thank you. Yeah, he seemed to indicate that maybe he had worked on the architecture with Stephen to a certain degree, so he may have access to that. The issue that I had with that was, or I guess the potential concern that I have is, I believe that Dan has pulled away his offer of working on faster finality synchronous calls. What I don't know is whether or not the work that he had done over the last couple of months in building that architecture, if he's withholding that information, or if he's willing to give and or be compensated for that information. And if Stan has access to it, then maybe there's no need to compensate, or maybe there's a different route to take. I just don't know.
Cool, we'll find out.
Thank you.
Okay, so Lucas,
Guillaume,
we'll
you had
find out the
also
status.
had access to that, or you also were aware of that, Guillaume?
Yes, so I just shared in the coalition group the Stan's proposal as well as Stephen's proposal for upgraded consensus. These are the highest level documents that I'm aware of.
Awesome. So that could be used for the RFP for faster finality as well.
Yep. That's pretty much exactly it.
Awesome. Thank you. We also, yeah, good. I'm good with that.
Okay, so so I added that here. There are two last items, and we're close to 10 my time. Jeff, you wanted to kind of circulate a proposal for a status update template. Did you? I didn't see that one. It would be great if you could forward it.
Okay, I think I reached out. I mean, that's fine. I can forward it, but that might be, given the things that we've just talked about, less important. So I can just forward it to the group.
Thanks. And then I'll take a look at it and then see how we can facilitate that in this kind of work mode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, and then Brandon, you wanted to take the task to kind of identify group faces, as we called it in the last call, that would represent kind of groups in joint interviews or podcasts or streams or whatever that might be. Have you been able to kind of figure out something there?
No, it's just been all kind of bundled up with the whole communication strategy in general, but now I think I understand a bit more. So we're talking about identifying individuals that are from the respective organizations and making sure we can get them some airtime here and there.
Yes.
Thanks, Lucas. I know you have to go. Brandon, I would like to, be put on the list as somebody to talk on videos if there's questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll
I think the best medium
Yes,
for
this
this
is
will be
a
Twitter
separate-
Spaces. And we could do an EOSIO coalition panel, I think would be a good first starting point. Invite all of our communities to it. But I could coordinate that with Brandon offline. I don't know when when it would be good timing.
I
But-
think, yeah, that's great. I think we should there's things like there's EOS channel, EOS or EOSIO channels, that it would be really, I think they would be hungry for this kind of information. And I think if we just propose it, they'll be able to roll with us. It'd be nice to see at least one, good podcast having, a representative of each chain there, slapping each other on the back a little bit.
Yeah, right now there's not too many high traffic, high view podcasts on the EOS EOS. I don't know what everyone else has. Wax probably has the best influencers at this point. But Helios would be an option. We could host it on our channel. But that's why I think Spaces is good, because we're starting to play around with it. We have a virtual event next week, and it's just, that's where the majority of it's crypto Twitter for a reason. If we want to reach an audience outside of EOSIO, I think that's probably the best place for discovery. Whereas on YouTube, we're probably just going to be talking within an echo chamber, which is good for talking about like in the weeds stuff that we want to get deep into the detail. But I think a good kickoff for this would be like an AMA on Spaces.
Great. You guys are leading this. So I trust whatever you think, the area, whatever you think it is the best way to go, let's set it up. But the only input I had is I'm happy to do that on the Telos side, and that I think this is a step that should happen sooner rather than later, just because it's going to get this stuff across. However you guys think is the best, whatever you think is the best venue for that, I'm all in. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Relying on your expertise.
I'll insisting that it's gotta be Chinese, Eve.
We can do that. Actually, every Twitter space always has the interpreter, of course.
Yeah.
I'll
I
ask
only
Daisy
speak I only
specifically
speak
for you.
Japanese, guys. Sorry, and Korean.
Yeah.
So
So the other
I listened into the last one though.
the other content will be once we decide when we want to do a public call and invite the other EOSIO chains. I mean, it's not the same as doing like a podcast or anything, but it would be an opportunity for all of this group to kind of speak up about what everyone's been working on and sharing it with the other EOSIO chains and also the community, all of our individual communities by extension, once we upload that to YouTube and wherever else.
I believe that topic is an item on the agenda today, correct? Kirsten, the calls that we were having to reignite them, the larger calls.
That wasn't part of today's agenda in total. We when I meant work groups, I meant the like legal leadership, resource governance, and so on. So basically update the committees there. But oh yeah, here reorganization, work groups, and schedule. You're right. You're actually right.
So what I meant, I guess, in my original message that I posted was, and I think it was the third thing, administratively, I think we should be doing the basics like setting up weekly meetings, internal and external. Internal, I meant this group. External, I meant the larger group of people who did not initially join the coalition. I think that we should continue having those calls, if not weekly, then at least bi-weekly, where we update what this group has done to the larger group, hear any feedback, and basically continue that cadence that we had set to continue down, I guess, what we had originally created, which was inclusivity to everybody, regardless of whether or not they were paying members or not. They still got us here over the last couple of months. I would like to continue that if possible. I think that would be very important. So despite the other chains not having participated now, they may in the future, and the decisions that we're taking here and the funding and the resources and the priorities that we are, I guess, making decisions here do affect them. And so I think that having that weekly or bi-weekly cadence with them would be important, and that would continue down the path of doing things differently than the way Block 1 did, which was doing in a silo, and not in a very open, transparent manner with the rest of the actual users.
Would it be fair to say that we could start this bigger work group beginning of May, when we do have those first results that we just discussed today?
That could be okay. I guess what I would want to avoid is that I don't want to have meetings when we have something to talk about. We could just have them regardless, because if we're meeting, let's say, if we're meeting every week here, it could be that every second week we're meeting with everybody. 1 week here, 1 week with everybody, 1 week here, 1 week with everybody. Try that for a period of time and see whether or not that works. There's nothing stopping this group, including subgroups of this group, meeting other times during the week as well. But that way we ensure that they keep getting the information and that we keep including them. And because there's also, like we mentioned earlier in this call, this one's being recorded. Are we making it public? I also like the idea that we were making the other ones public. Few people watched. It's not so much for the viewership, but when people did ask, like, hey, what's going on? At least we could always point to, look, it is available. Everybody can view, everybody can participate, not necessarily be on the call, but people can keep us accountable to what it is we're doing, because we are representing a lot of token holders, and it's not realistic for us to go and ask every single token holder for every decision we're making.
So but what you mean is that we would have this kind of meeting that we had today in the larger group. I'm not sure. I personally would be a little afraid that we then lose kind of the efficiency that we have there.
Realistically, most people are not going to talk in the other group. So it's just going to be the same people that are talking right now in the other group, just other people listening. And really, I guess if it does become that the other non-coalition members start impeding the progress of this group by either interjecting too much or talking too much or slowing down progress, we can then deal with it at that time, where we ask people to either please refrain, and or if actually you've got a lot of concerns, you're slowing down the progress, you got two choices. Do you want to join the group or do you not want to join the group? Like, we could have that discussion at that time.
What are the actually Lucas dropped? Guillaume, what is your thought on that?
On what, sorry? For the reorganization of the work groups?
Yes,
No,
and
the
having
idea of having so we used to host the calls every Thursday at this time with the larger group. Now
Gotcha.
that there's 4 chains that have essentially become paid members, we've now stopped the other calls. What I'm suggesting is we should continue the other calls, because we know that this time slot works for everybody, because it worked for everybody before. I think that a quick fix could be 1 week it's just this closed group, the following week it's the open group, the next week is the closed group, the following is the open group, so that we every 2 weeks meet just us, likely come to decisions and such, and every 2 weeks now it becomes open. It's likely still going to be us making decisions and talking. The other people are just listening in. But
Yeah, no, I
every
think
2
it's
weeks,
fine.
the call is recorded
I
and
think it's
published.
fine. The one thing I was thinking was maybe like we make it kind of like by default, it's the members of the coalition that are able to talk. The other ones would have to raise their hand or be permission to talk, for example, just as we discussed earlier on when we were talking about membership versus non-members, like observers, voters, etc. So I think this
Would you make
would be
that proactively, or would you wait until there's a repeated offender and then bring it up? Because you may find that like we say you need to raise your hand and nobody was going to raise their hand in the first place.
Well, I would establish a precedent. I would kind of mention it at the beginning for maybe as a reminder, and then see if people respect that. If they don't, then we enforce it like brutally.
Yeah, I can.
What do you think, Jesse? And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to skip you, Kirsten. It's just Jesse is the voting member, the third voting member on the call. And I guess this is a decision that we're taking.
Yes.
Yeah, I support that. I think we can, like you said, address if things come up when they happen. And I anticipate the same, that there's not going to be a lot of people jumping in and engaging. And if they do, hopefully it's positive. And if they don't have positive stuff, then we can deal with it.
Okay, so then take this as a decision. Yeah, and then Zach, would you be kind enough to update the invites so we have like every second week?
Jeff is now the owner.
Oh, Jeff. Yeah,
yes.
Sorry.
Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff, thank you. If you wanted to do that, and then just every second Thursday, then that way it's the same time zone. We don't need to go back to Doodle. We already have the email list. Re-invite everybody.
So we talked about the blog updates would be a cadence of every other week. Maybe we could alternate. So 1 week it's the public video, and then the following week we just kind of, if we're given high-level summaries in the public call every other week, then the following week we just kind of release text version of that blog format plus any little things we come up with. And then we could have, that would give us content every week. It would just be a different format. We'd have a video 1 week, and then we'd have blog the next week.
That's aggressive. That means a weekly output.
Well, it's,
do you have the capacity to do that?
The video,
I like that.
The video is not, the video is just upload. Like, I'm not talking edited Zoom, it's an uploaded Zoom video to YouTube.
No, but you're saying in the written portion, you'd have, for example, the next written portion would have the, hey, we transferred funds into this account. Here's the permission set. Here's the account, etc. But then you'd also add, oh, and here's a written summary of what we talked about.
I wouldn't say a written summary. I think there'd be a lot of overlap is the thing. Like, we're not going to tell the other group that we transferred funds necessarily, but if we're talking about our top 5 priorities, that would most likely have a lot of overlap.
Cool. If you think you can, yeah, the more communication I think would be awesome. So if you think you can handle it, go for it.
Well, it's more so that the video just isn't extra work. The video is just uploading to YouTube, giving it a title. and the thumbnail.
Yeah. They're both still every 2 weeks. It's just they alternate that way.
Yeah, otherwise we're over aggressive in a single week, because if we don't alternate weeks, then it's just going to be 2 pieces of content in a single week.
Oh, I'm good with that too. 2 every week for the next 6 months. Let's go for it.
We'll take care of it. Brandon and I are already we're in each other's DMs during this whole call, so we'll figure it out.
I also tried that. It failed. Anyway, so
By sharing the screen.
cut that out, please. Anyway, so yeah, so we've got a decision for that. So this weekly meeting closed group is more budgets, funding, voting. We could kind of also say voting would be in the closed group usually. So tech discussions, prioritizations, not necessarily. Question.
I would make any distinction between the two. I would say it'd be business as usual. Just one of them happens to have more people, and the other and it is recorded and is published, and the other one isn't. But that's my opinion. I don't think that we should like the agenda for this one is we can talk about money, and the other one we can't talk about money, because either way we're going to be publishing everything.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm just trying to be protective in this perspective. So you're right. So this is the same scope, except we would probably give like a short status update to the people that join in that were not on the other call. So
that's another good question. Should we give a summary of what we talked about last week at the beginning of the one that's open? If we can keep it like 5 minutes, sure. But if we're going to take half an hour, I would say that that's eating too much of the time. Because we wouldn't need to rehash what we talked about last time. So next Thursday, for example, if we're going to spend the first 30 minutes summarizing what we just did today, that I would say is a waste. I would rather not do that.
Why not just let them come to every meeting? It seems like you're pretty open, and we're gonna do standard business. I'll bet you a bunch of them don't even come. I
personally would be okay with that, as long as they don't become disruptive, which they haven't. Right. So I would be okay with that.
They'll be less disruptive if they're not trying to catch up every other week. True. I think you'll see they'll just drop off. They'll just fall off.
Or it'll be like what it's been for the last couple of months. It's really, many of them are just silent and listening in, and that's okay.
Crickets. Guillaume, you okay with that? Jesse, you okay with that?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It might also motivate them to reconsider and potentially join if they see weekly progress.
And we're saying that they would be, this is all the other chains, or just the general public and anybody?
The 3 chains.
No, the same group as before. So essentially we keep doing what we were doing before, except now there are people that can vote and that have power and fund, and others don't.
But the last ones were all made public. So would the idea be like even today's call, like moving forward would be, I don't think besides Kirsten's DMs going on the screen, I don't think.
And I mean, we have to update our constituents anyways, and we're going to be publishing everything anyways, not necessarily the call itself, but we're like the information, the content itself is going to go out publicly. So I have no issues with that.
Yeah, I think
we were doing it. We were doing up till now. We were doing it for the last 3 months. I didn't now become more liberal in this call and more vocal than I was in the other 3 months. So no difference.
Okay. Your beard's
Douglas clearly didn't change himself either. So I think it's fine.
Yeah, but no, I think it's a good idea, and I would kind of do the other way around, where if there are some private matters that we need to discuss just between the coalition, we move that to another call, another time slot.
Yeah, that's cool. And then, or in the chat and stuff. Yeah.
And then during the recorded call, like there's a pause button in my corner here. We just simply pause it, go over whatever.
Go in camera, but it hasn't happened in the last 3 months. Like I don't
know.
Unless we're gonna like.
Then we should.
Jesse, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Same as before. It's just every call instead of every other one, right?
Yeah, it's actually easier in a way.
All right, so let's bring this up I'll bring it up in the Telegram after this call. I don't think this call, there's no reason this one can't be public if everyone's in agreement.
Be okay with that. Let's just ask Lucas, because he's gone, but otherwise, Aaron, if you're still here, do you think that that addresses the concerns that you had brought up a few weeks back?
Yeah, I believe so.
See, I told you I'd be on it.
I figured it would come back to that, and the whole reason I brought it up was just to make sure we didn't lose sight of it.
It's a good thing you didn't give me a deadline.
Good. Okay.
I think this is good. I'm actually very, very happy with this decision that everybody is in agreement with this. I think it's going to be a really, really nice signal to the rest of the group that right after we formed the coalition, one of the first things we decided is actually like, no, we're not going off in our little corner. We're letting everybody in from the get-go, because that was the vision, that was the mission, and we're sticking to that right from the beginning.
And the other
Let me
benefit is
restate
if, sorry. I
Let
was
me
just gonna-
restate the fact.
Go
So
ahead,
you're
you go.
saying, go look at the general meeting and all of the email invites that were on the general one, add them as optional to this meeting.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the deltas.
Yep. And then do not mess around with every other week. Leave this a weekly meeting with just new optional people.
Yeah, and yes, Kirsten wrote in the chat, Zach, before you publish, if you can go and cut his share screen, edit it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot easier to edit than some kind of audio where I'd have to find it. I just need to fast scroll until I see his DM up on the screen.
Yeah, or just blur it or what, because there was some discussion about stuff in there, so I wouldn't want to have that shared.
Yeah, good point. I could just put an overlay over it. Okay.
And we're never live anyways, and so even in the future, it'd be the same thing. We just edit it out if something like that were to happen.
Yeah, and the
Typically
benefit
was Rami recording, we could just let people know before it's posted if there was a mishap like this.
Yeah, I really like this too, because ideally, as far as comms, we'll get community members eventually that are ambitious enough to start picking up on things like this, and maybe they'll cover the calls or whatever, and it kind of takes some of the burden off of us, and we can just kind of add the icing on the top. But it would be nice to see independent coverage of this.
Very cool.
Cool.
Great. Then I would propose to close the call. Thanks, guys. We really,
And that's
really
why
great.
you're still needed, Kirsten.
To close the call.
To close the call, to open the call, to take the meeting notes, to share the screen and show us the Miro board, to
To
I'm
wrangle
not
the
sure why you
cats.
would think that you're not, I'm not sure why you would think that you're not needed. You're fulfilling an extremely critical function that that's been really helpful in getting us here to date, for sure.
You need to grow up
For
here,
sure.
though.
I certainly appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank you.
me as well, Kirsten, of course.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Thanks, guys.
Kache's like,
So-
shit, I wanted to quit this job. Ah! It's like, no, I wasn't offering, I was actually quitting. No.
It's all fine. It's great. Great to be with you guys. This is a pleasure. Yeah, and then for me, it's evening. I gotta go to bed now. So see you next week, guys.
Hey, take care, everybody. Cheers.
Farewell. Cheers.